You're off the project until you publicly apologize to my ex-husband. My wife, the CFO, yelled in the all hands. I just nodded. Okay. Next morning, she smirked, learned your lesson? Then she saw my desk cleared and the resignation letter. The company lawyer burst in pale, shouting, "Ma'am, tell me you didn't." It started on a Thursday morning, the kind that already smelled like burnt coffee, recycled ambition, and bad decisions dressed in business casual. The office was buzzing with that fake kind of productivity people put on before an all-hands meeting. You know the drill. Everyone suddenly clicking their mouse extra loud like the sound itself makes them look important. Me? I was in my cubicle running on 4 hours of sleep and pure caffeine spite. For the past 3 weeks, I'd been cleaning up an audit disaster left behind by the company's favorite visionary consultant, also known as my wife's ex-husband, Adrian Foster. Yeah, you heard that right. My wife's ex, a man whose entire personality could be summarized as LinkedIn post with bad lighting. Adrian had been demoted a few months ago after his revolutionary compliance automation nearly burned down our accounting system. Instead of firing him, upper management gave him a participation trophy title, strategic consultant. Translation: someone who gets paid a 6-figure salary to say buzzwords like synergy and cross-functional alignment without doing anything measurable. Meanwhile, I was the guy working nights reprogramming his mess so the company wouldn't get slapped with a federal audit fine. I was expecting at least a quiet acknowledgement at the all-hands meeting, a simple nice work Mason, maybe even a fake clap from HR. I should have known better. The meeting started like every corporate cult ritual. My wife, Jenna, the chief financial officer, hair flawless, tone, managerial, smile expensive, stood at the front of the room with her assistant hovering nearby, holding a tablet like it was the Ark of the Covenant. Behind her stood Adrian, wearing that smug, "I just survived another demotion" grin and the kind of cologne that could double as a fire hazard. She cleared her throat. Good morning, everyone. Today's all hands will be short. I just want to address the recent audit situation. I leaned back in my chair, sipping my coffee, waiting for my pat on the back. Instead, she slammed a folder on the conference table so hard half the interns jumped. Before we move forward, she said, glaring at me like I just insulted her dog. I need to make something clear. Mason is off the audit project until he issues a public apology to Adrian. The entire room went silent. You could have heard a stapler drop 3 cubicles away. Even the HR director, Karen with a K, blinked so hard her eyelash extensions nearly took flight. Adrian folded his arms, doing that fake humble head tilt people do when they're secretly thrilled to be part of drama. It's not personal, he said, pretending to sound gracious. It's just about maintaining team harmony. Team harmony. This is coming from a guy who once misspelled the word budget in a board presentation and blamed the intern's energy. I set my coffee cup down and just stared at them both. Not in anger, not in shock, just that calm, neutral kind of stare that says, "Oh, you think you're in charge now? Cute." Everyone was waiting for me to explode, to argue, to defend myself, to throw out a "that's ridiculous." Instead, I smiled. Okay, just one word, crisp, clean, polite. The verbal equivalent of pulling a grenade pin and walking away. Jenna blinked. Excuse me. I said, okay, I repeated, calm as meditation music. Then I leaned back, crossed my arms, and looked around the room like we were voting on whether pineapple belongs on pizza. She was expecting a scene. The whole office was people were already adjusting their mental popcorn supply. But instead, I gave them silence. The kind that makes people uncomfortable because they don't know what comes next. HR coughed nervously. Someone at the back whispered, "Did he just say okay?" Adrian shifted in his seat, clearly thrown off that I wasn't performing the meltdown they all wanted. See, I'd learned something about corporate life a long time ago. Loud anger gets you labeled unprofessional. Quiet compliance. That's how you start wars. Jenna gathered her notes, visibly irritated that her dramatic little power play didn't hit the emotional notes she rehearsed in front of the bathroom mirror that morning. Fine, she said sharply. Meeting adjourned. People scattered faster than interns, avoiding unpaid overtime. Adrienne lingered behind, pretending to help her collect papers, but mostly trying to look important. I grabbed my coffee mug, stood up, and gave him that half smile I reserve for people who think they've won. Congratulations on the promotion, I said, tone smooth as butter. Hope you enjoy the view from middle management purgatory, he chuckled awkwardly. You know, Mason, you really need to learn how to work with people. That attitude is what keeps you from real leadership roles. Right? I said, pretending to think about it. Because leadership's about letting your wife's ex manage your projects without basic literacy in Excel. His smile faltered for half a second before he recovered. It's just business, man. Sure, I said, nodding like I believed him. Just business. But inside, I was already 3 steps ahead. Because here's the thing. When someone tries to humiliate you publicly, the real power move isn't fighting back. It's letting them think they succeeded. Let them dance on your ego while you quietly pull the floor out from under them. I walked out of that meeting with my dignity intact, my reputation slightly bruised, and a new plan forming faster than my coffee could cool. Back at my desk, people avoided eye contact like I was contagious. HR peeked out from her office, probably drafting an email with incident in the subject line. One of the interns, Jake, mouthed, "Are you okay?" from behind his monitor. I smiled and mouthed back, "Never better." I spent the rest of the morning off the project, which really just meant I had time to clean up a few personal files, make a few encrypted backups, and recheck some contracts I hadn't looked at since the company rebranded. Every click was therapy. Every file I saved was a quiet little act of defiance. Around lunch, Jenna texted me. "Jenna, we'll talk about this later." "Me? Sure thing. Bring Adrian. He seems to be running things now." No reply. By 3 p.m., Adrian sent me a Slack message, probably thinking he was extending an olive branch. "Adrian, no hard feelings, right? Let's keep this professional. Of course, I'd hate to see you get emotional at work again." He didn't respond either. When I got home that evening, Jenna was waiting in the kitchen, wine glass in hand, acting like nothing happened. "Rough day?" she asked, swirling her Chardonnay, like she was auditioning for the Real Housewives of Finance. "Not really," I said, loosening my tie. "I just got some free time," she laughed nervously. "You're not actually mad, are you? You embarrassed Adrian during a meeting. You practically called him incompetent." "Because he is incompetent," I said. "You know that better than anyone. You divorced him." Her jaw tightened. "That's not the point, Mason. He's trying to rebuild his career. You don't have to make it harder." I smiled. "I didn't." "You did." She sighed and looked away. "You know, sometimes I think you don't understand how corporate politics work." "Oh, I understand perfectly," I said, grabbing a beer from the fridge. "I just don't play checkers with people who think they're playing chess." She rolled her eyes. "You're being dramatic." "Me? Never," I said, leaning against the counter. "But hey, thanks for the public character assassination today. It really added some flavor to my Thursday." She took another sip of wine, clearly realizing this wasn't going to end in a hug. "You could just apologize, Mason. It would make things easier." "For who?" I asked. "You, him? The HR department that's already drafting a memo titled, 'When Spouses Work Together, a Cautionary Tale.' Mason." I put my beer down and smiled faintly. "You know what? You're right. Maybe I should apologize." Her face softened. "Really?" "Yeah," I said. "Tomorrow morning publicly." She exhaled, relieved. "Good. That's all I'm asking." "Of course," I said, walking past her toward the stairs. "You'll get your apology." What she didn't realize was that my version of an apology doesn't come with tears and graveling. It comes with strategy. It comes with silence, paperwork, and a smile that says, "You should have known better." That night, while she scrolled through her phone in bed, probably texting her friends about how she handled the situation professionally, I was in the study revisiting old files, contracts, archives, system diagrams, my insurance policy, the kind of paperwork that makes or breaks empires. As I flipped through an old digital folder labeled Consulting Agreement, Legacy Systems, a grin crept across my face. Clause 9b. It was still there. My secret ace. I leaned back in my chair, sipping what was left of my beer, and whispered to myself, "Congratulations, Jenna. You just lit the fuse." There's a specific smell offices get when politics start rotting the air, like burnt toner and silent resentment. It had been 4 days since Jenna's little performance at the all-hands meeting, and people were still whispering like middle schoolers in detention. I couldn't walk to the coffee machine without catching fragments of gossip floating through the cubicle jungle. "Did you see how calm he was? Maybe they're fighting at home. I heard she made him sleep in the guest room." Oh, the drama. If this place ever went under, it could survive another decade, just selling its gossip as reality TV. Adrian, my wife's ex and my newly self-appointed supervisor, had officially returned to strategic consulting, which is corporate speak for "let's pretend this guy still matters." He'd somehow convinced upper management that his catastrophic system redesign was ahead of its time, which in Adrian language meant, "It still doesn't work, but I found better synonyms." He strutted into every meeting like he owned the building. All smiles and cologne strong enough to knock out a small horse. His PowerPoint slides had gradient backgrounds, motivational quotes, and exactly zero substance. My favorite was the one titled The Future of Integration, a holistic approach to team resilience. Spoiler alert, it was 12 slides of circles and arrows pointing to nothing. Meanwhile, Jenna was all business. No pet names, no casual, hey babe, not even a smirk. She'd gone full CFO mode. Emails with per my last message, calendar invites labeled urgent alignment, and meetings that felt like cross-examinations. We used to talk about vacation plans. Now we discussed budget variances. I wasn't sleeping next to my wife anymore. I was sleeping next to the company's risk management strategy. On Tuesday morning, I arrived early, mostly to enjoy 10 minutes of silence before the circus began. I grabbed a cup of the world's saddest coffee, sat at my desk, and opened my inbox to find 36 unread emails. 20 of them were from Adrian. Subject lines like re-audit workflow alignment, follow-up on follow-up, touching base on yesterday's touch base. I swear this man could write a novel about nothing and still CC half the company. I clicked one open and nearly laughed out loud. Hey Mason, just looping back on our ongoing collaboration. I noticed your risk flag parameters don't match our new operational philosophy. Let's recalibrate our synergy moving forward. Operational philosophy. The man was talking about code and using words better suited for a yoga retreat. I replied, hey, Adrian, thanks for flagging that. I'll make sure my parameters align with your evolving spiritual journey. Then I hit send and took a long, satisfied sip of coffee. By 9:30 a.m. the day's first meeting began. Jenna had called it an interdeep departmental transparency sync, which if you speak corporate, translates to mandatory group therapy session. The entire compliance department crammed into conference room B, where the thermostat was permanently stuck between sauna and freezer burn. Adrian stood at the head of the table like a motivational speaker who'd lost his audience years ago. Morning team, he chirped, clapping his hands. Before we dive in, I just want to acknowledge the great progress we've made bridging departmental silos. Translation, he wanted credit for something he didn't do. Jenna sat next to him, tablet in hand, pretending to take notes, but mostly keeping her eyes on me like she was studying a particularly uncooperative science experiment. Adrian clicked to his first slide, a stock photo of people high-fiving. Let's talk about emotional alignment and compliance, he said. I nearly choked on my coffee. Emotional alignment. He smiled like a man who'd read half a self-help book and decided he was Gandhi. Yes, we're all people before we're employees. If we can connect emotionally, we can build trust, and trust leads to better audits. Right? I said, leaning forward. Because nothing says trust like a surprise HR meeting. A few people snorted. Adrian ignored it. And to demonstrate this, Jenna and I are going to lead a quick exercise. Now, if you've never seen your wife and her ex lead a corporate team building exercise, congratulations. You've probably made better life choices than I have. Let's do something fun, Adrian said, grinning like a man seconds away from being punched. Everyone pair up with a coworker and share one professional insecurity and one personal strength. He looked right at me. Mason, why don't you start with me? Of course he wanted that. I smiled. Sure thing, boss. We faced each other across the table like duelists. The room was dead silent, except for the hum of the overhead lights. My professional insecurity, I said. I sometimes worry about working under leadership that doesn't understand basic compliance frameworks. A few people coughed to hide their laughter. Jenna pinched the bridge of her nose. Adrian, visibly trying to stay zen, forced a smile. Okay, and your personal strength. I leaned back. Patience. That got an actual laugh from the back. Adrian's smile cracked for half a second before he plastered it back on. Good one, he said through his teeth. My professional insecurity is I can be too visionary and my personal strength is emotional intelligence. I nodded seriously. Interesting. I would have gone with creative resilience and selective memory, but sure. Jenna finally cut in. Okay, that's enough. Let's move on. The rest of the meeting went downhill fast. Adrian tried to present his new audit collaboration framework, which was just my old system rebranded with new colors and worse functionality. Every time he stumbled through an explanation, Jenna jumped in to smooth it over like she was protecting a fragile intern instead of her ex-husband. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. My silence was doing all the heavy lifting. When the meeting ended, people scattered like pigeons after fireworks. Adrienne stayed behind, pretending to pack up slowly. Jenna lingered too, obviously waiting for the post-meeting talk. Mason, Adrian said finally. You were a little sharp back there. We're trying to foster positivity. I smiled. That's what I was doing. I felt very positive about being honest. He sighed. Look, I know this is weird, but we're professionals. We can rise above personal history. Couldn't agree more, I said, grabbing my notebook. You start. Jenna exhaled loudly. You two sound like children. I raised an eyebrow. You made me report to your ex, Jenna. I'm already living in an HR case study. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Just try to be civil. Always am, I said, heading for the door. Back at my desk, I found another email waiting from her. Not from Jenna, my wife, from J.L. Thompson, CFO. Mason, please ensure all your current documentation aligns with Adrian's consulting revisions by Friday. We'll be reviewing team adaptability metrics next week. Team adaptability metrics. That's CFO code for I'm testing your compliance through passive-aggressive paperwork. I replied, understood. Copying HR for visibility. It's amazing how fast an HRCC can change someone's tone. The next 2 days were an absurd circus of fake smiles and overcompensating professionalism. Adrian started dropping by my desk uninvited, using phrases like quick sync and collaboration culture. He'd lean against the cubicle wall like he was in a sitcom, sipping from his company mug with the words, "Innovation starts with you" printed on it. Hey, man, he'd say. Just checking if we're aligned. Oh, we're aligned, I'd reply. You're facing north. I'm facing the exit. By Thursday afternoon, I was done pretending. During a review session, he proudly showcased a new code model that was literally my design from 6 months ago, copy-pasted and renamed Fosterflow 2.0. And oh the nerve. Everyone nodded politely, pretending not to notice. I watched in silence, arms folded and sipping my coffee. When he finished his speech, he looked at me expectantly. So, Mason, thoughts? I smiled. Yeah, I think plagiarism is the sincerest form of flattery. The room went silent. Jenna shot me a death glare. Adrian's smile twitched. You're funny, he said, voice tight. Thanks. Mine, I said. It's a coping mechanism. After the meeting, Jenna cornered me in the hallway. You're pushing it, she hissed. I'm not pushing anything, I said. I'm just adapting per your last message. She groaned. You're impossible. Yeah, I said, walking past her. That's why you married me. Twice the entertainment, half the meetings. That night, we sailed through dinner in silence. She scrolled through her phone while I replayed every conversation of the day in my head, each one confirming what I already knew. This wasn't just office politics anymore. This was a marital Cold War disguised as quarterly alignment. When she finally looked up, she said, Adrian thinks you're undermining him. I almost laughed. I don't need to undermine him, Jenna. He's doing that all by himself. She shook her head. You can't keep doing this. You're making me look bad. Sweetheart, I said, pushing my plate away. You made yourself look bad the moment you asked your husband to apologize to his replacement. She didn't respond, just got up and walked upstairs, leaving her wine half finished. I cleaned the table quietly, poured myself another drink, and looked out the window at the dark city skyline. My reflection in the glass looked tired, sure, but amused. Because even as the office descended into chaos, I wasn't panicking. See, the beauty of corporate warfare is that everyone thinks they're the hero until the paperwork says otherwise. And me, I wasn't done yet. Friday morning began like every other exercise in corporate self-delusion. Lukewarm coffee, a calendar full of meetings that could have been emails, and an inbox screaming for attention like a toddler with an iPad. I'd barely sat down when the company-wide Zoom invite popped up on my screen. Mandatory all hands hosted by CFO Jenna Thompson. The subject line already smelled like drama. Mandatory hosted by my wife at 9 a.m. on a Friday. That wasn't an update. That was a public execution with better lighting. I texted my coworker, Ryan from it, me. She's doing it, huh? Ryan. Yep. HR brought donuts. That's how you know it's bad. I sighed, closed the spreadsheet I'd been pretending to work on, and joined the call. 200 tiny faces appeared, tiled across my monitor like a digital hostage lineup. Some had cameras off, others were pretending to type, and a few had that glazed "I'm mentally on Indeed.com" expression. Jenna appeared in the center box, perfectly framed, hair immaculate, that CFO calm plastered on like a PR stunt. Good morning, everyone, she said brightly, voice smooth enough to butter toast. I appreciate you joining on such short notice. Oh, here we go. Adrian's face hovered beside hers, beaming like a proud intern who had just discovered the share screen button. He wore a navy blazer that screamed, I practiced this speech in the mirror, Jenna continued, as you all know, We've been working on re-establishing a culture of collaboration after recent tensions. Tensions? I almost spit out my coffee. Tensions is what you call a bad Wi-Fi signal. Not your CFO publicly disciplining her husband because her ex couldn't follow basic compliance procedure. She clicked to the next slide, a company stock photo of smiling employees around a whiteboard, the kind of picture that smells like unpaid overtime. Now, I wanted to address an internal concern regarding leadership behavior. Someone in the chat wrote, "Oh boy." She looked directly into the camera at me. It's been brought to my attention that certain individuals have been creating a culture of fear and inflexibility. The room, or rather the entire digital hive, went silent. You could feel 200 people holding their breath. While technical excellence is important, she continued, team harmony is equally vital. When feedback becomes confrontation and collaboration turns into control, we all lose. I took another slow sip of coffee. Classic corporate translation. We're not mad you fixed the system. We're mad you made us feel stupid about it. Then came the dagger. Effective immediately, she said. Mason will be removed from oversight of all ongoing compliance audits until further review. My Slack blew up instantly. Private messages flooding in. Dude, what did you do? Are you okay? You need a lawyer? Adrian, ever the opportunist, leaned forward with that condescending smile he must have practiced during his divorce hearings. To clarify, he added, this isn't punitive. It's about promoting a safe and creative work environment. Safe and creative. Yeah, because nothing screams creativity like firing the guy who kept your company from a federal fine. My screen lit up with faces pretending to look sympathetic while secretly loving the drama. HR blinked so hard I thought her webcam froze. Even the CEO's little window flickered, probably debating whether to step in or grab popcorn. Jenna clasped her hands, waiting for my reaction. The moment hung heavy, awkward, almost cinematic. She expected me to argue, to unmute, defend myself, make it messy. That's what everyone wanted. The fireworks, the scandal, the emotional confession. Instead, I smiled just slightly. Then I unmuted. Okay. One word, calm, polite, and lethal. 200 faces froze. Adrian's smile twitched like a dying battery. Jenna blinked twice, thrown completely off script. Sorry, she asked, voice trembling just a little. You're right, I said evenly. Culture is important. Please proceed. Then, without another word, I clicked leave meeting. Boom. Gone. No mic drop, no outburst, just silence. The digital equivalent of walking off stage and letting the applause die awkwardly. My phone buzzed immediately. Ryan messaged me again. Ryan, bro, you just ended the internet. Me? Nah, just optimizing system efficiency. I stood up, stretched, and looked out the window. Outside, the city hummed. Car horns, distant sirens, the usual Friday chaos. It felt poetic. While the company combusted in HR-approved language, I had peace and an iced coffee. Within 10 minutes, my inbox exploded. Emails from Jenna, HR, the CEO, even the company lawyer, Melissa. Subject lines like urgent, please respond, and let's clarify communication protocol. I didn't open a single one. Let them sweat. Silence was the most underrated weapon in business. It forces everyone else to narrate your motives. By lunch, the rumor mill was spinning so fast it could have powered the server room. I overheard snippets as I walked past the break area. Did you see him just leave? Apparently, he's resigning. No. So, I heard he's suing. Wait, he's married to the CFO? Yeah. Some of them didn't even know. Corporate America, where people you've worked with for 3 years don't know you're married to upper management, but they can quote your Slack emojis. Around 100 p.m., I finally checked my phone. Jenna had texted, Jenna, what was that? You embarrassed me in front of the entire company. Me, sorry, I thought we were promoting transparency. No reply. At 2:30, she called. I didn't pick up. Then she called again. Finally, I answered on the third ring just to enjoy the suspense. Her voice was sharp enough to cut glass. You can't just log off a company meeting like that. Sure, I can. I said. I clicked a button. Mason, be serious. I am serious, I said. You wanted an apology. You got acknowledgement. That's practically the same thing in corporate language. She sighed, frustrated. You're impossible. Thanks, I said. Put it in my performance review. Click. I went back to my desk, humming softly, pulling up some old files. Not work files, my own archives. Things I'd kept from my early consulting days when this company was a 2-room startup run by caffeine and delusion. Back then, I'd built the backbone of the system, the compliance engines, the audit triggers, the security protocols, the kind of code that makes or breaks billion-dollar acquisitions. And somewhere in that dusty contract folder, I remembered a particular clause, something I'd written when I was young, paranoid, and legally creative. But I wasn't ready to touch that card yet. Not until they played theirs first. By evening, the entire office had descended into chaos. Someone leaked the Zoom recording. It was already circulating on the company chat channels under the name CFO versus Husband, Dawn of Compliance. HR tried to delete it, but you can't stop the internet once it smells scandal. My phone buzzed again. Ryan calling this time. "Dude," he said between laughs. "You went viral internally. They're making memes. One's got your face over Thanos saying, 'Okay, accurate,'" I said. "Perfectly balanced," he snorted. "You're insane." "Maybe, but I'm also unemployed for the weekend." "Man," he said, lowering his voice. "You sure you want to poke that bear?" "Jen is furious." "Good," I said. Me means she's predictable. After hanging up, I made dinner. Steak, medium rare, because I deserve something satisfying. Jenna didn't come home until late. When she walked in, she looked exhausted. Her power bun now a war crime. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" she snapped. "Yeah," I said calmly, slicing into my steak. "I saved myself a meeting." "This isn't funny, Mason. The CEO wants answers. The board's asking questions. HR is threatening to mediate." "Perfect," I said. "Maybe they'll finally learn what mediation actually means." She threw her bag onto the couch. "Why can't you just cooperate for once?" "Because," I said, looking up. "I'm not the one who turned our marriage into a management case study." Her eyes flashed. "You've humiliated me." "You've humiliated yourself," I said, tone still even. All I did was stop participating. For a second, she said nothing, then softer. "You're going to regret this." "Maybe," I said, finishing my bite. "But not tonight." She stormed upstairs without another word. I waited until I heard the bedroom door slam before pulling out my laptop again. If the morning had been humiliation, the night was clarity. I wasn't just angry. I was awake. I'd played by corporate rules too long. Polite, differential, logical. But the game was rigged. People like Adrian failed upward while people like me cleaned the mess quietly in the dark. No more. I typed a few lines of code, disabling some back-end redundancies, not destructive, just delicate edits. The kind of changes no one notices until they matter. Then I saved everything to an encrypted drive labeled DRK Core. A little inside joke. When I shut the laptop, I felt lighter, peaceful, even. Let them think they'd won. Let them print memos and whisper about damage control. Monday would come soon enough. And with it consequences. Because in corporate America, silence isn't weakness. It's the sound of a plan taking shape. And me, I was done talking. You ever have one of those mornings where you wake up and realize the storm you caused is now trending on Slack? That was me on Monday. I opened my laptop and before the login screen even blinked, my phone buzzed nonstop. Emails, messages, notifications. The company hadn't just imploded. It had turned into a full-blown corporate opera. HR sent a reminder about professionalism. The CEO sent a "we value every voice" email that sounded suspiciously like damage control. Even Adrian, the ex-husband turned consultant turned peacock in a blazer, had sent me a no hard feelings note, complete with an emoji handshake because nothing says maturity like passive-aggressive clip art. But I wasn't angry. Oh no, I was calm. Dangerously calm because that kind of chaos meant one thing. They'd finally stepped exactly where I wanted them. 19 years ago, back when this company was called Delta Financial Tech and ran out of a second-hand office above a nail salon, I'd been one of the original architects. Just me, a couple of developers, and a whiteboard that smelled like regret. We'd built the audit systems from scratch, line by painful line of code, duct taped together with caffeine and paranoia. And because I didn't trust anyone, least of all the founders, who thought legal review meant asking their cousin who'd once watched Suits, I'd written a few protective clauses into my consulting agreement. Nothing dramatic, just insurance, the kind of thing people overlook because they assume the nerd writing it is harmless. Clause 9b. That was my secret weapon. Buried in 4 pages of boring legal jargon. It read, in the event of termination without cause, all derivative systems remain property of the consultant. Translation, if they ever tried to remove me unfairly, I own the bones of the company's tech stack. Every script, every compliance tool, every data model, mine. They could fire me, sure, but they couldn't use the system I built without paying for it. I'd written it back when the company had no legal department and no one read anything past page 2. 18 years later, it was the digital equivalent of a loaded gun gathering dust in the basement. And after Friday's little public humiliation, I figured it was time to start polishing the barrel. I logged into my old archives, encrypted of course, and there it was. My original contract, time-stamped, digitally signed, notarized. I even had the original email thread where the founder approved it with a thumbs-up emoji. Classic startup energy. I couldn't help but grin. The beauty of a long career in tech is that people forget you were there before the rebranding, before the mergers, before the shiny logo. They forget you built the engine while they were still learning how to buckle their seat belts. So, while Jenna was upstairs in our home office, probably FaceTiming Adrian about strategic messaging, I was in the living room, laptop open, resurrecting a ghost. I spent hours cross-referencing code versions, system logs, and IP ownership trails. Every keystroke was therapy. Every timestamp was vindication, my music playlist, Lo-fi beats for lawful revenge. By 1 p.m. I had a complete record showing that 90% of the current compliance infrastructure, yes, the same one Adrian bragged about reimagining, was a derivative of my original framework. My name sat quietly in the metadata of every core file like a digital signature that never sleeps. That meant Clause 9b wasn't just a bluff. It was ironclad. Around 2 p.m., Jenna shouted from upstairs, "Mason, can you hop on a quick call? The CEO wants to discuss Friday's incident." Ah, the incident. The corporate euphemism for train wreck we caused but want you to fix politely. I joined the Zoom call. On screen were Jenna, the CEO, HR's favorite emotionless mannequin, and Adrian, smirking like he'd just been promoted to class president. "Good afternoon, Mason," the CEO began. "We wanted to clear the air after Friday's unfortunate situation." I nodded. "Sure, let's clear it." "Mason," Jenna said, professional tone fully loaded. "The company feels your reaction was disproportionate." I raised an eyebrow to being publicly reprimanded for doing my job correctly. Adrian jumped in, smiling, that patronizing smile. "Hey man, we're not blaming you. It's just tone matters. You could have handled it with a bit more empathy." "Empathy?" I repeated. "For the guy who almost crashed our audit system." He chuckled awkwardly. "We're all learning." I leaned forward. "That's true. For example, I'm learning how much patience I have for corporate hypocrisy." The CEO cleared his throat. "Mason, let's stay constructive. We'd like to move forward, but we need your cooperation to ensure a smooth transition." "Transition?" I asked. "To what?" "To new leadership on the compliance side," Jenna said carefully. There it was. The soft corporate breakup. "It's not you, it's structure." I smiled slowly. "So, let me get this straight. You're removing me from oversight based on a public accusation with no documented cause." The CEO hesitated. "Let's not use words like removal. Think of it as reallocation." I leaned back. "Got it. So, termination without cause." Jenna frowned. "No one said termination. Right?" I said, keeping my tone easy. "Just confirming for my notes." They exchanged looks. HR scribbled something in her notebook. Adrian sipped his water, probably trying not to choke on irony. "Anything else?" I asked. The CEO forced a smile. "We'll have HR follow up with the necessary documents." "Perfect," I said. "Please do." And just like that, I ended the call before they could say another word. The second I closed my laptop, I exhaled. Calm, measured, triumphant. They thought they'd boxed me out. They had no idea they just pulled the trigger on Clause 9b. That night, Jenna acted like everything was fine. She poured herself a glass of wine and talked about investor calls, dinner reservations, quarterly updates. I nodded, smiled, played along. Every marriage has its rhythms. Ours just happened to alternate between romance and legal chess. After she went upstairs, I stayed up late reviewing system access logs. There it was, the telltale sign of arrogance. Adrian had rebranded one of my frameworks under his own consultant account. Audit Core V9 was now FosterFlow 2.0. Cute. I opened the server portal, scrolled down, and smiled when I saw the fine print. I see proprietary module licensed to Mason Drake Consulting LLC. The man had just stolen something. Something I legally owned and used it in a corporate environment that had technically terminated me without cause. The poetry of it was almost beautiful. At midnight, I drafted a short email to legal@delta.com. Subject: inquiry regarding IP ownership of derivative compliance systems. Hello. As per my original 2006 consulting agreement attached, I retain ownership of derivative systems developed under Audit Core v9 architecture. Recent company activities appear to be utilizing said framework without renewed licensing. Please confirm authorization. Regards, Mason Drake. Founder Drake Core Systems LLC. I hit send and smiled. At exactly 12:04 a.m., I received the automatic response. Your message has been received. Legal will review within 35 business days. Translation: they'd start panicking by Wednesday. I closed the laptop, leaned back, and stared at the ceiling. I wasn't angry anymore. I was in that rare golden stage of revenge where patience becomes power. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to fight. The paperwork would do the talking. And the best part, Jenna didn't even know. She still thought she was holding the leash. CFO, queen of the spreadsheets, married to the man she'd publicly disciplined like an intern. She'd find out soon enough that she'd married the system she'd just tried to dismantle. Before heading to bed, I poured one last drink and toasted to the quiet brilliance of fine print. Clause 9b, my silent accomplice. The fuse was lit. The thing about corporate explosions is that nobody ever hears the first click. It's always quiet, too quiet. One day you're in a meeting arguing about brand synergy. The next your entire infrastructure is eating itself alive. My plan wasn't about revenge. Not really. It was about control. I'd lost that the moment my wife, my CFO, decided to turn a company meeting into a marital firing squad. Now I was taking it back one silent keystroke at a time. That Friday night, the office was dark except for the pale glow from my monitor. Jenna was upstairs in her home office FaceTiming her executive circle, which was just code for her wine-drinking therapy group. They all spoke in those self-help mantras like, you have to own your narrative. And remember, you can't pour from an empty cup. Meanwhile, I was downstairs owning my narrative by disabling license keys. I didn't delete anything. I'm not a monster. I just let a few systems expire. A graceful shutdown. No alarms, no chaos, just quiet expiration dates slipping into the digital night. People underestimate how much of a company runs on assumptions. They assume passwords never change, backups always restore, and compliance tools hum eternally in the background. Me, I was the guy who built those assumptions into existence. So, all I had to do was let them rest. I sat there in the faint hum of server fans, sipping coffee gone cold, printing out my resignation letter, a simple 3S sentence masterpiece of politeness. Dear Jenna, effective immediately, I resigned from my position. Thank you for the opportunity to contribute. Best Mason Drake. The smiley face wasn't professionalism. It was sarcasm bound in Times New Roman. A digital wink for whoever found it first. I signed it, slid it into an envelope, and left it on my spotless desk. Upstairs, I heard laughter, the glass clinking kind. I imagined her telling her friends how she'd handled the Mason situation, probably describing me like a stubborn intern she finally disciplined. I smiled at the thought. They had no clue the intern just owned their infrastructure. By midnight, I'd scrubbed every trace of personal data from the system, transferred the core repositories to a secure cloud under my LLC, and revoked all active licenses tied to my name. Not maliciously, legally. Clause 9b wasn't revenge. It was maintenance. They could still function, sort of. They just wouldn't know why everything suddenly needed my permission to breathe. I powered down the monitor, stretched, and caught my reflection in the glass. The look on my face wasn't anger. It was satisfaction mixed with caffeine withdrawal. I went to bed early for the first time in weeks. Jenna thought I was sulking. In reality, I was waiting for Monday morning, 9:00 a.m., a more satisfying alarm clock than any sunrise. Saturday passed quietly. Jenna spent most of it pretending to work while subtly checking if I'd apologized yet. She floated by my desk once, wine glass in hand, scanning the empty surface where my laptop used to sit. You're not coming to the investor brunch tomorrow. I didn't even look up from my book. Wouldn't miss it, I said. Good, she said too quickly. Because Adrian will be presenting and it would look bad if you don't worry, I said. I'll be the picture of professionalism. She smiled, satisfied, not realizing that the picture I had in mind was me walking out of the frame entirely. Sunday evening, I cooked dinner. Steak, garlic, potatoes, wine for her, whiskey for me, domestic calm before corporate Armageddon. She seemed lighter, like she'd already rewritten the narrative in her head. The big dramatic scene from last week was just one of those moments, something she could file away as character growth in her imaginary TED Talk. Halfway through dinner, she said, "You know, Mason, I think things are getting better." Adrienne said, "The board's impressed with how I handled everything." I almost laughed. "Impressed," I said, chewing slowly. "Yeah, That's one word for it. She smiled proudly. See, it's all smoothing out. I nodded. It will be eventually. She missed the tone entirely. That night, while she watched some mind-numbing Netflix reality show upstairs, I made one last adjustment. A single delayed trigger in the license database. A timed expiration that would quietly deactivate their high-tier compliance dashboard Monday morning. Not enough to destroy anything, just enough to make it clear who'd really been running the show. Then I closed the laptop for good. The soft click felt like a punctuation mark. Monday, 8:59 a.m. The office was buzzing with artificial confidence. Jenna walked into the building wearing her favorite Victory heels, the kind that made her sound like a small army approaching. Adrian trailed behind, clutching a stack of printouts he definitely made just for show. The all-hands meeting was scheduled for 9 o'clock sharp. I wasn't there. I was at home in sweats, bowl of cereal in hand, watching the internal company live stream through a backdoor feed I'd built years ago for diagnostic purposes. Jenna opened the meeting with a bright PR-approved smile. Good morning, team. I know last week was challenging, but I'm proud to say we're moving forward stronger than ever. Someone off camera sneezed. Foreshadowing, probably. Adrian stepped up next, clicking his little remote like he was launching the next iPhone. Thanks, Jenna. Today, I'll be demonstrating our updated compliance dashboard streamlined for maximum efficiency and transparency. He turned to the projector. As you can see here, blank screen. He clicked again. Nothing. The audience shifted. Jenna frowned. Adrian laughed nervously. Technical glitch, he said. Can you already checking? Came a voice from the back, panicked. The screens behind him flickered like dying fluorescent lights. Then one by one, the dashboards vanished, replaced by error messages. License invalid. Contact administrator. Adrian's smile froze. Jenna turned pale. The CEO leaned forward, whispering something off mic. Adrian stammered. It's a temporary issue, just a network hiccup. He tried to open the investor portal next. Same message, access revoked. Contact Drake Core Systems. At home, I poured another bowl of cereal. The meeting descended into chaos. People started whispering. It ran around rebooting things. The CFO's composure cracked like bad porcelain. Adrienne fumbled through excuses, claiming legacy software interference. Jenna finally snapped, slamming her hand on the podium. Get Mason on the phone now. Oh, sweetheart, you already did. You just didn't know which phone line I answered. By 10:15, my personal phone rang. Her name lit up the screen. I let it go to voicemail. A few minutes later, a text. Jenna, system's down. Please respond. This isn't funny. Me, funny. No. Educational. Definitely. 5 dots appeared, then vanished. She was typing, deleting, typing again. I could practically feel the panic vibrating through the airwaves. Another text came through, this one from Adrian. Adrian, hey man, we're in a bit of a jam. Can you jump on a quick call? Me, sorry, I'm off the project. It felt poetic. By noon, my inbox exploded with emails from corporate. Urgent, critical, Mason, we need your expertise. I didn't respond to any of them. I wasn't being petty. I was simply respecting boundaries, the ones they'd so enthusiastically enforced. Around 3 p.m., I took a long walk around the neighborhood. The weather was perfect. Blue sky, soft breeze, the kind of day that makes you realize peace isn't about forgiveness. It's about distance. When I came back, I brewed coffee, sat on the porch, and watched the chaos unfold via company Slack leaks, screenshots, frantic messages, employees joking that the ghosts of it past are haunting us. By 5 p.m., Jenna's tone had shifted from fury to desperation. Jenna, can we talk privately, please? Me, sure. Send a calendar invite through your system. No reply. Later that night, she came home. Not the confident CFO anymore, just a woman whose empire was slipping through her manicured fingers. She dropped her bag by the door and looked at me like I was a fire she couldn't figure out how to put out. Mason, she said softly. What did you do? I sat down my coffee. I resigned. You disabled the systems. I disabled my systems. I corrected. Big difference. You can't just clause 9b. I said, calm as ever. Look it up. She blinked. What clause? The one you never read. Her face went blank the way it does when realization lands like a falling piano. You're saying you own the bones? I finished for her. Every audit engine, every compliance database, every derivative module. I built the skeleton, Jenna. You just dressed it up in designer suits. She sank onto the couch, silent for once. I stood, stretched, and said, "Don't worry, I didn't break anything. I just reminded you who built it." Then I walked past her to the door. "You should probably tell Adrian to stop presenting dashboards that don't exist," she whispered something I didn't catch. Maybe an apology, maybe disbelief. Either way, I didn't stop to listen. Outside, the air felt crisp and clean. Freedom always smells like coffee and server dust. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even smug, just done. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't a scandal or a scream. It's a quiet exit signed with a smiley face. Monday mornings are supposed to start with bad coffee and fake smiles, not panic calls from the CFO's office. But when your wife's ex is running the show on a system you legally own, the universe tends to reward irony. At precisely 7:43 a.m., my phone started buzzing like a nest of angry bees. The company hotline, my personal line, even LinkedIn messages. Every platform screaming some version of help. I ignored them all, letting the chaos marinate. Nothing makes executives sweat like silence. By 8 o'clock, I was eating cereal on my couch, watching the storm unfold on my private admin dashboard. Not to brag, but it was cinematic. Error alerts flashing like fireworks. Database clusters stalling. Compliance bots begging for missing credentials. My masterpiece of controlled failure. The best part, everything was reversible. I hadn't destroyed a thing. I'd simply withheld permission. Like a landlord changing the locks on a tenant who forgot they don't actually own the building. At 8:15, I got a text from my friend Ryan in ET. "Ryan, dude, the network's melting. Dashboards be in blank. CEO's screaming. Adrian's crying. Me crying. Crying. Or corporate crying. Ryan. He's in the bathroom with his blazer off. So real crying." I couldn't help but laugh. Adrian, Mr. Synergy himself, reduced to a puddle of panic while I sat in my pajamas spooning frosted flakes. Karma was punctual today. By 8:30, the internal Slack channels were chaos incarnate. Someone posted a screenshot. License error. Contact administrator. Drake Systems LLC. My old logo. Still there. Still smug. At 9 o'clock sharp, Jenna's number lit up my phone again. I answered this time, mostly because curiosity is a hell of a drug. Her voice was pure caffeine and desperation. "Mason, what the hell did you do?" "Good morning to you, too," I said. "The entire system's offline," she snapped. "Investors are calling. The CEO is threatening to pull contracts in Adrian, let me guess," I said. "He's presenting graphs that don't exist." "This isn't funny," she hissed. "Of course, it's not funny," I said. "It's tragic. A company this size, crippled because nobody read Clause 9b. Someone should have hired better lawyers." "Mason," she said, voice softening just enough to sound rehearsed. "You made your point. Now, please fix this before it ruins us." "Ruins you?" I corrected. "I'm fine." She exhaled shakily. "Please, I'm asking you as your wife." "Wife," I said. Interesting choice of word after last week's meeting. "Which role are you using, CFO or spouse?" "Mason, tell you what," I interrupted, setting down my cereal. "I'll consider it if you make a public statement acknowledging that I own the Dracor framework. I don't even need an apology. Just truth." She hesitated. "That's impossible." "Then so is your login," I said and hung up. Silence. Sweet liberating silence. I opened my laptop and watched the chaos unfold like the world's most satisfying live feed. The CEO's admin console was flashing unauthorized. The investors' dashboards displayed service suspended. It was in meltdown, rebooting servers like a defibrillator with no heart to revive. And Adrian, oh, poor Adrian, was in a meeting trying to manually explain data trends he couldn't access. Ryan sent another update. "Ryan, bro, he tried to draw the graphs by hand on a whiteboard. Me, art therapy." I almost felt bad almost. By 9:30, my email inbox overflowed with messages titled urgent. The CEO himself sent one that began with Mr. Drake instead of, "Hey, Mason." That's when you know they're scared. They switched to formality from CEO Prime Union Holdings. Subject: Immediate assistance requested Mason. It appears our systems have encountered a serious licensing issue. We believe this may relate to your legacy infrastructure. Please contact me immediately so we can resolve this amicably. Regards, Douglas P. Henley. Amicably. Corporate for before I call my lawyer. I poured another cup of coffee, cracked my knuckles, and replied from Mason Drake to Douglas P. Henley. Subject: Remediate assistance requested Douglas. I'd be happy to assist. However, As the rightful license holder of the Drake Core framework, see attached contract clause 9b, my consulting services would need to be re-engaged under standard vendor terms. Please have legal contact my office to discuss retainer options. Warm regards, Mason Drake, founder Drake Core Systems LLC. I hit send and took a long sip of coffee. That was my version of lighting a cigar after a clean job. At 10 o'clock, Jenna called again. I ignored it. Then she called from her office phone. I ignored that, too. She tried email next subject, please. Inside one line. They're blaming me for a second. Just a second. I felt something. Not guilt exactly, but nostalgia. I remembered the woman I married before she became the company. Back when she laughed without spreadsheets and kissed me without scheduling it. Then I remembered her standing in that meeting room shouting, "You're off the project until you apologize to my ex-husband." Yeah, sympathy deleted. Around 11, Ryan texted again. "Ryan, bro, HR just sent out a company-wide memo saying, we're experiencing temporary technical adjustments in corporate translation. We're screwed, but don't panic." Ryan, people are panicking. Me good. By noon, Bloomberg-level panic had set in. The compliance team couldn't access investor data. The audit files were frozen. The automated report system was spitting out error codes like a broken slot machine. Adrian tried rebooting a server manually, which is kind of like trying to perform brain surgery with a spoon. Jenna's third text of the day came through at 12:47. "Jenna, the CEO's threatening to fire me. Please, Mason, I'll fix this with you privately." Me, send me the statement. Jenna, what statement? Me. Acknowledging ownership. Drake Core Clause 9b. You remember? Jenna, you're blackmailing me. Make no, I'm invoicing you. At 1:30, the company lawyer, Melissa, called me directly. She sounded winded, like she'd sprinted through 5 meetings and 2 existential crises. "Mason. Hi, it's Melissa from legal," she said. Her tone trying to stay professional but cracking around the edges. "We're reviewing the contract and well, it appears Clause 9b is indeed enforceable." "Appear," I said. "It's notarized, time-stamped, and signed by your founder." "Yeah," she sighed. "Technically, you own the framework." "Technically," I repeated. "You're welcome to test that theory in court." She exhaled audibly. "Can we discuss a buyout?" "Sure," I said casually. But my rates have gone up. Supply and demand, you know." She groaned. "I'll get back to you." "Take your time," I said. "You've got about 0 system access left." By mid-afternoon, when the company was hemorrhaging productivity like a sitcom with no writers, the CEO was on the verge of a breakdown. Investors were threatening to pull out. And the internal network chat looked like a therapy session. Meanwhile, I was sitting on my porch, laptop balanced on my knees, watching the chaos from my back-end view. I didn't need popcorn. Their Slack logs were entertainment enough. Then around 3:45, Jenna showed up at the house. She didn't even knock, just stormed in, heels clicking like tiny gunshots. "You need to stop this," she said, standing in the doorway, chest heaving. "They're about to shut down operations." "I told you," I said calmly, not even looking up from my laptop. "I didn't break anything." She crossed her arms. "You crippled us." "I paused your subscription," I corrected. "You can resume anytime. Just need to sign the vendor agreement." She glared. "You're enjoying this." I looked up finally, met her eyes. Not enjoying, just appreciating accountability. It's rare these days. She sank into the armchair opposite me, her entire posture deflating. "They're going to fire Adrian." "I'll send flowers," her voice softened. "And me." "Actions have consequences," I said, echoing the line she'd used on me once. "Remember?" She didn't respond, just stared at the floor. After a long silence, she whispered, "You win?" I leaned back, tilting my head. "It's not a game, Jenna. It's business. The part you always forgot." For the first time in weeks, she didn't have a comeback. No corporate buzzwords, no damage control jargon, just quiet. After she left, I reopened my email and saw a new message from the CEO. Subject, contract negotiation. "Mason, we'd like to retain Drake Core Systems immediately. Legal is drafting a new consulting agreement. Expect payment terms within the hour. Respectfully, Douglas P. Henley." I smiled respectfully. That's corporate for we surrender. By 6 p.m., my bank app pinged with a deposit notification. An obscene consulting retainer paid in full. The same company that publicly humiliated me was now paying me to fix the mess they created. Adrian reassigned to a strategic ideation. Translation: no duties, no access, no future. Jenna suspended pending internal review. HR called it temporary leave to ensure objectivity. I called it karma on PTO. As the sun dipped below the skyline, I closed my laptop and poured a whiskey. For the first time in years, the world felt balanced. You could call it revenge. And I called it realignment. The company got their lesson. Jenna got her reckoning. And I got my piece, plus a very comfortable retainer. And the best part, I didn't raise my voice once. Because in corporate America, the loudest power move is silence and a well-timed invoice. There's a distinct kind of silence that only happens after corporate disaster. A heavy buzzing quiet where everyone pretends to be working while secretly updating their resumes. You could feel it through the walls of Prime Union's glass tower that Tuesday morning. The air conditioning hummed, keyboards clicked like guilty confessions, and somewhere deep inside the building, a printer jammed dramatically, as if protesting the incompetence surrounding it. By 9 cam, Jenna's name was trending on the internal Slack board. Not officially, of course, but through coded messages. Anyone heard from finance? CFO not in yet. Should we even submit the Q3 review? Translation: is the Queen dethroned? She was still on leave, which in corporate language meant the board sharpening the guillotine. Adrian, the man who started this entire circus, had gone radio silent. According to Ryan Innit, he'd been seen leaving the office carrying a cardboard box full of personal items, including a novelty mug that said, "I'm kind of a big deal." I almost wished I'd been there to see it. I was on my porch again, coffee in hand, scrolling through my phone as if I didn't own half their infrastructure. Technically, I did. Drake Systems had been reinstated under a formal vendor contract the night before. The retainer they'd wired me could have bought me a Tesla, a vacation home, or a lifetime supply of pettiness. Though, honestly, I already had plenty of that. At 9:32 a.m., my phone buzzed with an incoming call. Unknown number, but I recognized the area code immediately. The company's legal department. I answered casually. Drake Systems, Mason speaking. Mason, thank God, said a voice I recognized. Melissa, the company's lead counsel. She sounded like someone halfway between a stroke and a meltdown. We have a situation. I took a slow sip of coffee. You usually do. No, I mean a real one. Papers rustled on her end like she was flipping through a legal exorcism. I'm in the CFO's office right now and well, ma'am, tell me you didn't. There was muffled whispering. Another voice. Jenna's shaky, defensive. It wasn't supposed to be public. Melissa groaned into the phone. Mason, you're going to want to sit down for this. I looked at the chair I was already sitting in. I'm good, she sighed. Jenna tried to delete your Clause 9b documentation from the shared legal server. I paused mid-sip. Tried? Yes, Melissa said, voice strained. Tried as in failed spectacularly. Your clause triggered an automatic backup to the board's cloud repository the moment she tampered with it. The alert went straight to the CEO and the audit committee. I almost spit out my coffee. She what? She thought she could update the contract to remove the clause retroactively. Unfortunately, that's not how contracts work. So the board knows? I asked. Oh, they so know? Melissa said grimly. They're in full panic mode. I've got 3 partners from the parent company's legal division dialing in from New York demanding explanations. Jenna's in tears, the CEO's pacing, and Adrian's name just got mentioned as a possible liability. I leaned back in my chair, grinning. Sounds like Tuesday. Mason, Melissa continued, voice dropping to a whisper. Off the record, I told them to stop digging before they make it worse. Clause 9b isn't just airtight, it's nuclear. If they keep poking it, they're going to find out they technically licensed their entire audit suite to your LLC for indefinite use. Technically, I said, feigning innocence. Legally, she corrected. It's your system. All of it. I let that sink in for a second. The same people who treated me like an expendable employee now couldn't run a compliance check without my permission. God bless meticulous paranoia and a good lawyer from 2006. Mason, Melissa said, snapping me out of my thoughts. The board's calling an emergency session at noon. They want you there. I blinked. You want me to come back into the building? They're begging you to come back, she corrected. I'd strongly recommend showing up. I couldn't help it. I laughed. This is going to be fun. Walking back into that office felt like stepping onto a movie set after a scandalous finale. Every head turned when I entered. Some curious, some terrified, most pretending to look busy. The receptionist nearly choked on her gum when she saw me swipe my visitor badge. Mr. Drake, she stammered. You're here for the board session apparently, I said, where's the confetti? She didn't get the joke. I rode the elevator up to the 14th floor. Executive level. The doors opened to the familiar smell of stress, expensive perfume, and denial. Outside the boardroom, Melissa was waiting, clutching a thick folder like it was her emotional support animal. They're inside, she whispered. And Mason, maybe go easy. No promises, I said. When I walked into the room, it was like a scene out of a courtroom drama. The CEO, Douglas, sat at the head of the table, red-faced and sweating. 3 board members joined via video call from New York, their faces pixelated, but clearly annoyed. Jenna sat near the end, pale and quiet. Quiet, her hair tied back in a defeated bun. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Douglas cleared his throat. Mr. Drake, thank you for joining us on short notice. I smiled. I wasn't doing much. Just running your systems from my couch. One of the board members, an older woman with steel gray hair and a voice that could curdle milk, said, we've reviewed the documentation surrounding Clause 9b. I nodded. Ah, yes, my favorite bedtime story. Her frown deepened. It appears that due to the language in your consulting contract, you retain ownership of the company's core compliance infrastructure. That's correct, I said cheerfully. For nearly 2 decades now, Douglas shifted in his chair. And Jenna attempted to, how should I phrase this? Revise the agreement. All eyes turned to Jenna. She looked like she wanted to vanish into her ergonomic chair. I made a mistake, she said quietly. I thought it was archived data. I didn't realize the gray-haired board member cut her off. You attempted to delete a binding legal document during an active investigation. That's not a mistake. That's misconduct. The room went dead silent. Melissa tried to smooth things over. Let's remember everyone's under stress. Stress doesn't justify tampering with legal records. The woman snapped. Douglas rubbed his temples. Mason, what would it take to make this right? I smiled faintly. Depends on your definition of right. Mason, he said, trying for diplomacy. You're clearly within your rights, but we'd like to avoid a public fallout. Investors are already nervous. Understandable, I said. I'm willing to help. Relief spread across his face. Too soon. For a price, I added. Douglas sighed. Of course. What's your number? I leaned back, savoring the moment. I don't want more money. You've already paid me. What I want is a statement, public acknowledgement that Dracor Systems is the sole architect and owner of the compliance framework that includes full credit in all investor documentation. The board murmured. Douglas hesitated. That's unconventional. So is being fired by my wife, I said. One of the New York board members chuckled before catching himself. After a tense silence, Douglas nodded. Fine, we'll issue the statement. In return, you'll restore system access. Within 24 hours of publication, I said. Written, signed, distributed. He extended a hand. Deal, I shook it. Please doing business again. As I turned to leave, Jenna finally spoke. Mason, wait. I stopped at the door. She stood, eyes glistening, voice trembling. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I gave a small humorless smile. You meant to embarrass me in front of the company. Everything after that is just cause and effect. I lost everything. She whispered. No, I said, you just learned who everything belonged to. Then I walked out. By the time I got home, my inbox was already buzzing with the press release draft. Prime Union Holdings acknowledges and thanks Dracor Systems LLC led by Mason Drake for the proprietary infrastructure that powers our compliance and audit platforms. We are proud to continue this partnership under a renewed strategic agreement. That's corporate code for we messed up and he owns us now. Ryan texted me 5 minutes later. Ryan, bro, you're a legend. They're calling you the Ghost Founder. Me? That's Dr. Ghost Founder to you? I poured myself a drink and sat back watching the sunset. For the first time in months, I felt calm. Not vengeful, not smug, just calm. 'Cause this wasn't about revenge anymore. And it was about balance. And the beauty of balance, you don't need to raise your voice to achieve it. You just need to write one clever clause and wait 18 years for karma to mature. You could measure the chaos inside Prime Union by the sound of Jenna's heels. The faster she walked, the closer someone was to being fairy. And that Monday morning, her heels could have registered as a seismic event. Click, click, click. Like an approaching lawsuit with lipstick. From what Ryan texted me, the office looked like a financial apocalypse. Investors were calling. The servers were crying. And the only person with working credentials, me, was making a second cup of French press coffee at home. When you're in control, you don't rush. You let the panic breathe. By 9 a.m., The company Slack had devolved into full-scale hysteria. Departments were tagging me like I was tech support for the universe. At Mason, can you restore access for accounts payable? We have payroll stuck mid-process at Mason. Drake, please respond. Compliance bots have gone feral. At Drake Systems, you are our only hope. I sipped my coffee. They finally got it, I muttered. Then came the email from the CEO. Subject line in all caps, never a good sign. Urgent, all systems compromised. Mason, we need immediate intervention. Investors are threatening legal action. I understand you're within your contractual rights, but this has gone beyond a disagreement. Please call me before noon. Douglas, I didn't reply. You never respond when they're panicking. It ruins the power curve. At 9:37, Jenna called again. I almost didn't pick up. Almost. But curiosity is a dangerous hobby. Mason, she said, voiced breathless. We're collapsing. Good morning to you, too. Don't do this, she said. The board's in meltdown. The systems are unresponsive and Adrian's, let me guess, I said, hyperventilating into a branded mug. Not funny, she snapped. You're making a point. I get it. But we're both going down with this ship. I leaned back in my chair. Jenna, the difference between you and me is I brought my own lifeboat. Her tone softened, desperation sneaking through the cracks. Please, can we just talk privately? Sure, I said. Send a calendar invite through your system. I could practically hear her grinding her teeth through the phone. Then click. By Tenedo, the company was trending internally as the Titanic of tech. Someone in marketing leaked a meme showing Adrian as the captain clutching a coffee cup while the ship sank. For the first time in my career, corporate suffering was entertaining. Then, right on cue, Ryan called. Bro, you will not believe this, he said between laughs. Jenna just called an emergency investor meeting. Of course she did, I said. She's addicted to optics. Yeah, well, she walked in looking like a Wall Street power move, white blazer, blood red heels, face set to I'm not panicking, but dude, Adrian followed her in wearing a Hawaiian shirt. I choked on my coffee. Oh, what? Apparently, he thought it was casual Monday. Jesus Christ, I said. It's like watching reality TV for accountants, bro. Ryan said, lowering his voice. They're trying to manually rebuild your system with PowerPoint flowcharts. I set my mug down. PowerPoint. Oh, this is going to be biblical. At 11:15, another text came in. This one from Melissa the lawyer. Melissa. Mason. FYI, the CFO is attempting to access your private modules through an admin override. Me. Adorable. Melissa. It's triggering internal alerts. It's losing its mind. Me. Good. Builds character. Apparently, Jenna and Adrian were in her office surrounded by a swarm of interns trying to fix the system by resetting the server keys, which in non-corporate English is like trying to repair a jet engine with a hair dryer. At 11:40, my phone buzzed again. Ryan, this time, voice barely containing laughter. She's screaming at it, man. Full CFO mode. You know that tone that makes coffee curdle? Oh yeah, I said. The one she used on me during tax season. Exactly that. But wait, it gets better. Adrian tried to take charge and said, don't worry. I used to be a developer. He accidentally logged everyone out of the network, even HR. I laughed so hard I had to put my phone down. That man couldn't debug a toaster. No joke, Ryan said. People are printing resignation letters on the backup printer because the email's dead. Ah, poetic symmetry. By noon, Melissa's number flashed again. I picked up this time. Mason, she said out of breath. The CEO wants to know if you'll attend an emergency virtual board call at 1. I checked my watch. Depends. Will there be snacks? Please, she said. They're desperate. I smiled. Desperation is not a mood. It's a negotiation tactic. At 1 o'clock sharp, I joined the Zoom call. My screen lit up with the usual suspects. Douglas, the CEO, looking like he'd aged 10 years in 2 days. Melissa clutching a pen like a stress toy. Jenna perfectly framed in her designer suit but visibly unraveling. And Adrian hiding behind a fake plan in his background. Douglas started. Mason, thank you for joining. We're in a challenging position. Understatement of the year, I said. He exhaled. The investors are demanding operational stability by end of day. We need your cooperation to restore access. Sure, I said once the acknowledgement statement goes public. Jenna interjected, voice trembling but trying to sound firm. The board hasn't approved that yet. That's interesting, I said. Because my patience hasn't approved your access either. Douglas held up a hand. All right, let's de-escalate. Mason, you've made your point. We all understand the ownership structure now. I'm not sure you do, I said. Ownership isn't just a legal word, Doug. It's a boundary. You all crossed mine when you made me apologize to my wife's ex in front of 200 people. So now I'm setting new boundaries. Melissa looked like she wanted to applaud but remembered her job. Douglas rubbed his forehead. What do you want, Mason? I leaned closer to the camera. A correction, not a quiet one. I want the same energy you used to humiliate me. Press releases, internal memos, all of it. You name me as the architect of Prime Union's infrastructure. You sign the retainer contract and Jenna issues a statement acknowledging the clause. Otherwise, we let the lights stay off. The silence afterward was delicious. Adrian tried to speak. Look, Mason, I think, don't. I said, you thinking is how we got here. He shut up. Jenna looked at me through the screen, her voice finally cracking. You're destroying everything. No, I said quietly. I'm just reminding you who built it. Douglas nodded slowly, defeated. Fine, we'll release the statement by close of business. Once you confirm restoration, we'll wire the next retainer installment. Pleasure doing business, I said and logged off. That evening, I walked downtown just to feel the city again. Everything buzzed with noise. Cars honking, coffee shops crowded, people yelling into phones. It was chaos, but it was honest chaos. Not the polished kind you get in corporate offices where betrayal smells like cinnamon-scented air freshener. By the time I got home, the email was waiting. Subject, official statement for review. Prime Union Holdings formally recognizes Dracor Systems LLC as the proprietary architect and primary vendor for our compliance infrastructure. We express appreciation to its founder, Mason Drake, for his continued innovation and partnership. Short, clean, factual, and the sound of surrender. Attached was another file, the signed retainer. Bigger, better, long-term. I restored system access at exactly 7:05 p.m., watching as dashboards flickered back to life across the globe. In every office, a sigh of relief rippled through the corporate hive. To them, it was salvation. To me, it was proof that silence had done more damage than shouting ever could. A message pinged on my screen. Ryan, of course, Ryan. Back online. Whole companies cheering like they saw Jesus. Me, tell them it's just the IT guy. Then one more notification, an email from Jenna. Jenna, it's done. You won. I hope you're proud. I typed back slowly. Me. It was never about winning, just about remembering who I am. I didn't hit send. Some messages are better left as drafts. Proof you had restraint. I closed the laptop, poured a drink, and sat back. Outside, the city lights shimmered like 1,000 blinking dashboards. Alive again, but running on my terms. Chaos and heels. Order in silence. You know what's funny about revenge? It doesn't end when you win. It just changes its job title. I thought I'd reached the endgame when Prime Union crawled back, begging for system access. I'd done my victory lap, collected my fat retainer, and given them back their digital heartbeat. But the universe wasn't done turning this circus into a comedy special. It started 2 weeks later on a Wednesday that smelled like burnt espresso and moral exhaustion. My phone buzzed with a notification from LinkedIn. Prime Union Holdings posted a new job opening. Chief Technology Officer, CTO. I almost spit out my coffee. The position used to belong to a guy named Harris, a numbers-driven, quiet type who'd been trying to retire since 2019. Apparently, he'd stepped down for personal reasons. Translation, he'd finally realized this company was cursed and ran before the next wave hit. 5 minutes later, another notification popped up. You've been tagged in a post. I tapped it half expecting another "Thank you Dracor PR post." Nope. It was Douglas the CEO himself with the caption "Proud to announce our continued partnership with Dracor Systems and its founder Mason Drake as we expand into new innovation leadership opportunities." Leadership opportunities. I repeated it aloud. Corporate code for "we can't fire our problem so we'll promote him instead." Before I could process it, my phone rang. Caller ID, Douglas Henley. I sighed, answered. Doug, if this is another system panic, I charge double for weekends. He chuckled nervously. Not this time, Mason. This is different. The board has been talking. They want to offer you the CTO position. I blinked. Of Prime Union of the entire holdings group. He clarified. You'd oversee all infrastructure, global compliance, everything you already control. But with an official title and full executive benefits. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my coffee. Doug, I already control those things. The difference is right now I get paid more and attend fewer meetings. He tried his reasonable CEO voice. I understand, but look, our investors want stability and they trust you. After what happened, they see you as the reason we survived. I am the reason you survived, I said. That's why I'm not sure I want to be trapped in the building I rescued. He sighed. Come on, Mason. You'll have freedom, creative control, equity. Ah, the magic word, equity. Send me the offer, I said finally. I'll review it. He exhaled in relief. Fantastic. I'll have HR draft it by tomorrow. When the call ended, I sat there grinning into my coffee mug. Life really is poetic. 1 month ago, I was the company's scapegoat. Now I was being offered a throne built from their panic. By Thursday morning, the official offer letter was in my inbox. I skimmed it half amused, half impressed. The salary was obscene. The perks included stock options, a corner office, and the authority to hire and fire across department, including finance. Translation: I could technically fire my wife. I shouldn't have enjoyed the thought as much as I did. At 10 a.m., Douglas called again for informal follow-up. His voice was all sunshine and spin. So, Mason, can we make this official? The board's excited. Melissa's already cleared your contract. Before I accept, I said. I have one condition. Of course, he said quickly. Name it. Jenna stays off my chain of command. No overlap, no reporting structure, no shared meetings, nothing. There was a pause, then cautiously. Understood. She's no longer with us. Actually, I froze. Come again? She submitted her resignation last night, effective immediately. I didn't know what to say. The room felt too quiet. She said she needed time, Douglas added softly. Personal reasons. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. Of course she did. Chaos always costs someone their peace. Understood, I said finally. Send me the onboarding schedule. Welcome aboard, CTO, he said too cheerfully. That Friday, I walked into Prime Union for the first time as an executive. It was surreal. The same front desk that once ignored me now smiled like I was royalty. Good morning, Mr. Drake. Can we get you anything? Coffee, pastry. I'm good, I said. Just here to make sure the building's still standing. The elevator ride up felt like déjà vu, only quieter. No whispers, no side eyes. People avoided making direct contact, like I was both a savior and a warning sign. In a way, I was. When the doors opened to the executive floor, Douglas was waiting with his practiced enthusiasm. Mason, welcome back. Orwell up. He handed me an access badge with a sleek silver stripe, the kind that screamed authority with plausible deniability. We did the tour, conference rooms, the innovation lab, the executive pantry, with cold brew taps and overpriced granola. It was everything a modern tech company thinks screams we care about people while quietly owning their souls. When we reached my new office, Douglas gestured proudly. Your view faces downtown. Best skyline in the city. It was ridiculous. Floor-to-ceiling windows, private lounge, standing desk made from recycled aero aluminum. I ran my hand across it and couldn't resist saying, nice, expensive, unnecessary, perfect. He laughed awkwardly. You'll fit right in. After he left, I sat behind my new desk, looking out over the city. It was strange. This exact building had been the backdrop of every humiliation, every sarcastic whisper. Now was my territory. I wasn't sure if I wanted to laugh or burn sage of it. The first email that landed in my inbox came from HR. Welcome to the leadership team mandatory executive retreat next quarter. The second was from legal updated non-disclosure terms for your review. The third was from Ryan. Ryan. Bro, CTO, are you like Iron Man now? Me? More like Batman. Rich, bitter, nocturnal. Ryan, you firing people yet? Me, tempted. Later that afternoon, I ran into Adrian in the hallway. He looked smaller somehow. The Hawaiian shirt was gone, replaced by an ill-fitting suit. He was carrying a cardboard box again. Mason, he said, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Congrats on the new title. Thanks, then, and I said, heard you've been reassigned. He laughed weakly. Yeah, to strategic ideation, still figuring out what that means. It means they don't want to fire you yet, but they want you to think about why you should have quit sooner. His smile faded. Right. He turned to leave, then paused. Look, I know we've had differences, but for what it's worth. You played it smart. I shrugged. It's not chess if your opponent doesn't know the rules. He nodded slowly. Fair enough. Good luck, Mason. You, too, I said, though we both knew Luck had left his department months ago. That evening, after everyone cleared out, I stayed in the office a little longer. I opened the internal database, scrolling through lines of code that still bore my old tags. There they were. My fingerprints in every subroutine, every system heartbeat. Proof that the empire ran because I'd built its bones. It should have felt triumphant. Instead, it felt quiet, almost lonely. Power's funny that way. It amplifies silence. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Jenna, congrats on the promotion. You earned it. I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed back, thanks. Hope you're doing okay. No reply. I looked out at the city again. The skyline blinked like a circuit board. Each window a little light pulsing with ambition, greed, and caffeine. Somewhere out there, Jenna was probably trying to figure out who she was without the company. I couldn't blame her. I'd spent years doing the same. Now that I had everything, I realized everything didn't feel as loud as I thought it would. Still, I smiled. Because even if peace felt weird, it beat humiliation. The next morning, Douglas stopped by my office holding 2 coffees. Welcome to the club, he said, handing me one. We're glad to have you steering the ship. Appreciate it, I said, though technically I already was. He laughed. True, but now it's official. He lingered awkwardly before asking, so, how's it feel after everything? I leaned back in my chair, staring at the skyline. Feels like poetic irony with health insurance. He laughed again a little too hard. That's one way to put it. As he left, I opened my email again. 20 unread messages, all labeled urgent. Same chaos, different title. I chuckled, cracked my knuckles, and whispered to no one, let's make it interesting. By the end of the week, the news broke publicly. Prime Union Holdings appoints former consultant as new CTO after historic infrastructure overhaul. Reporters called it visionary. Investors called it stability. Employees called it plot twist of the year. Me, I called it what it was, the unexpected promotion that wasn't unexpected at all. Because in corporate America, the best revenge isn't burning bridges. It's buying the company those bridges lead to. A week after the promotion, I sat in my new office. Same skyline, new title, better coffee. The chaos had finally gone quiet. No more emergency calls. No ex-husbands lecturing about synergy. No CFO wife trying to rewrite my story in real time. Just peace. The kind that hums when you've finally stopped proving things to people who never deserved explanations. They called it a comeback. I called it good paperwork. The press loved the redemption arc. The ousted engineer who saved the empire. They didn't know I never left. You can't be fired from a system you own. The funniest part, my silence had done more damage than any angry email or lawsuit ever could. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't slam a door. I just let the system speak for me, one error message at a time. Adrian was quietly reassigned to something called strategic ideation, which sounded like a polite way of saying, we'll call if we remember you exist. Jenna disappeared from the corporate map, her LinkedIn quietly updated to consultant somewhere generic. I didn't hate her anymore. I didn't love her either. I'd simply outgrown the version of myself that needed her approval. One evening, I went home early. No meetings, no crisis. I made dinner, poured a drink, and watched the sunset reflect off the skyscrapers I used to resent. My phone buzzed with another LinkedIn message. Congrats again on your journey, Mason. You're inspiring. I laughed out loud. Journey? That's what people call it when you survive hell with better lighting. I walked over to the fireplace, tossed in the old printed copy of my contract, the one that started everything. Watching it curl and burn felt symbolic. Not because I was erasing history, but because I'd already archived the important part. Me, the guy who built something unbreakable, lost it, and took it back without shouting. The next morning, I got a call from an investment group. They wanted to license Dracor's framework for a new fintech startup. Triple the rate Prime Union paid. I didn't hesitate. Send the contract, I said, smiling. As I hung up, I realized I wasn't chasing revenge anymore. I was chasing quiet because revenge burns out fast. But silence lasts. Before leaving the office that day, I left a sticky note on my desk for whoever inherited it after me someday. It said, never underestimate the guy who smiles and says, okay. I turned off the lights, closed the door, and walked away. Not bitter, not broken. Just done. And in that silence, I finally laughed. Not the loud, triumphant kind, the calm, private kind that says, you won. 'Cause in the end, I didn't destroy the company. I just reminded them who built